Ninja Gaiden is one of those old school video games that defined the term NES hard. Even though it was one of my favorite games as a kid, I was never able to beat it back then. The speed, the barrage of enemies, getting knocked back into pits, the respawning enemies at the edge of the screen, the game is already difficult before you even get to the final bosses. But when you do, that's where the difficulty becomes legendary. Or maybe I should say that it goes from a challenge to downright sadism. If you've managed to get to the final bosses of the game, most likely your experience would have been something like this. After killing the first one, you suddenly are confronted with a boss that flies around at the top of the screen, and even though your life has been replenished, your item has been taken away. So you desperately try jumping all around to hit him with your sword, but his fire projectiles follow you all across the screen. And before you even have time to figure out any sort of pattern, you find yourself back at fucking stage 6-1. This cruel and unusual death mechanic has even been featured in one of the classic episodes of The Angry Video Game Nerd.
Final boss! Final boss!
You have 3 final bosses.
The first boss isn't too hard once you know how it's done, but the second boss is a nightmare. His fireballs never miss, they follow you everywhere you go. Are you fucking kidding me? I'm all the way back at stage 6-1? That's fucking horseshit! You die on the boss, you go all the way back?
You die, you go back. You must learn discipline.
But how am I supposed to practice on the boss? As soon as I start to learn the pattern, I die and I have to go through the last stages all over again. Then you'll get another shot at the boss, but they don't even have the fucking courtesy to refill your life bar. That is sadistic. Whoever programmed this thing, I want to rip their fucking heart out of their ass and show it to them so they can see how cold and black it is before they die.
So how do you beat the final bosses? Well, in this video I will teach you how to do it. First I will show you all 3 of the fights and then I'll break them down in detail. Alright, now let's analyze these bosses in detail. The first boss is unlikely to give you that much trouble. The boss himself has no attack, so all you need to watch out for are the orbs surrounding him. These can be completely avoided by jumping all the way up to the highest point of the wall. Once the boss is all the way on your side of the room, jump down as soon as a new orb fires from the central crystal. The same principle applies on the right side of the room, so just repeat that same pattern and you'll be fine. Now the second boss is where things get difficult. However, the trick to beating this boss is understanding how his fire projectiles work. As you can see here, none of his projectiles are following me. As long as you stay at the bottom of the screen, or at the very right or at the very left, the fireballs will disappear at the edge of the screen. Only when you are at the top of the screen attacking the boss will these projectiles start to follow you around. So the trick is to time your attacks in such a way that this never happens. As you can see, even though I'm jumping up from the plateaus, the fireballs will still disappear into the ground. So basically, each time he fires his projectiles, you want to guide them down into the ground or into the left or right side of the screen. In other words, never stay at the top of the screen. Move up to attack and then immediately move down again so the fireballs will disappear beyond the edge of the screen. The other thing that makes this boss difficult is that there are two separate patterns going on. He moves with a regular speed from one end of the room to the other, but the amount of time it takes to get from one side to the other is shorter than the amount of time it takes for him to fire his next projectile. So that means that each time he fires, he is at a different position in the room. And it takes several cycles before this pattern repeats again. So when he fires at you near the edge of the room, you can avoid his projectile by simply running to the other side. But when he fires at you when he is somewhere in the middle of the room, especially if he's right above you, you may need to get in between his projectiles to avoid getting hit. And that can be quite tricky because they don't travel in a straight line and sometimes they cross each other and sometimes they don't. When the fight starts, you can immediately get 3 hits on him by jumping from each of the 3 plateaus, from left to right. Then concentrate on dodging until he fires from one end of the room. Jump on the wall so the fire will move underneath you, then attack by jumping from the wall. Be careful however that you don't jump too far, because coming into contact with the boss himself, you will lose 3 bars of health instead of 1 bar that you will lose from getting hit by one of the projectiles. As you can see here, I make sure to jump straight down to avoid contact with the boss himself. Make sure to only jump on the wall after he fires. Now, in case you mess up your timing and a fireball starts chasing you, just stay at the bottom of the screen and the fire will start circling around you, and you can actually destroy it with your sword. Now, you may very well take a couple of hits, but you can actually take no less than 15 hits before you die, so this boss is actually way more forgiving than you might have realized. Once you get the pattern down, this boss is really not all that difficult. It's just the fact that it takes time to learn, and that's exactly what you don't have, because every time you die, you need to do the last 3 stages all over again. Now if you really cannot do it, then there's actually a way to cheese this boss. After getting killed and redoing the last 3 stages, you can pick up the whirlwind item at the beginning of stage 6 free. However, the difficult part is to get back to the boss without losing it. But when you do, you can use it to kill the boss in 1 hit. The problem, however, is that even if you get to this point with enough energy left, your item gets taken away after the cutscene, so you still have to know how to beat the demon. So let's take a closer look at the final boss fight. First, destroy the tail and the head so that you can get to the heart. Now, don't focus your eyes on Ryu, but instead focus on the part where the projectiles come out. You won't be able to react fast enough to a projectile that's already right above your head. Now, don't get greedy when attacking the head. Get a couple of hits in and then focus on dodging again. When the head comes off, you take a guaranteed hit, but this will only cost you 1 bar of health. Now the heart is exposed, you can attack from a temporary safe spot. For several seconds there won't be any projectiles coming down on this exact location. After a couple of seconds only 2 projectiles will come straight down and then it will be safe again for another couple of seconds. This pattern will constantly repeat. So it may look like chaos initially, but there is actually a very clear pattern to these projectiles. Now let's take a second look at this safe spot. You can see a single projectile coming straight down. Move left to avoid it. Then a second projectile will come straight down. Those are the only 2 projectiles you need to worry about. Then for about 5 seconds that exact location will be a safe zone. It's very precise, however, so you may need to adjust yourself a little bit to avoid getting clipped by a projectile falling down next to you. Right before this pattern repeats again, you'll see a single projectile going all the way to the right of the screen. Then the first projectile will come straight down again. Then you are safe again to attack. The only thing that can harm you now is if you get greedy and attack for too long, as you can easily get clipped by the final flurry of projectiles before the pattern repeats. So take your time and you'll get through it. And that's how you beat Ninja Gaiden. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe for more. Make sure to hit that notification bell and let me know your thoughts in the comment section.